Welcome back to another episode of the Girls Talk Money podcast. With Erin being a full-time content creator and me being a part-time content creator, we thought it'd be fun to dive into how we turn creating content on social media into a business. We asked you all for questions on our Instagram stories and got so many awesome responses that we'll be answering throughout the episode today. We're going to focus on building an audience on social media and monetization, but if you want an episode on the financial management side of creator income or any other creator-related topics in general, let us know in Spotify and we can definitely do an episode on that.
This is such an interesting topic, and I'm so excited to talk about this today because I think so many people are interested in starting on social media, or like to some extent, they're just curious about it. And I know you and I were having this conversation yesterday about how the gig economy is kind of taking over. And if you aren't familiar with the gig economy or you don't know what I'm talking about, essentially the gig economy is kind of like the freelance marketplace or any type of like contract income where you're not a full-time W-2 employee. And this is kind of becoming the case in a lot of different industries. And what's so interesting about content creation and how this relates is I think that becoming a content creator is really about like building your digital footprint and building your personal brand and putting yourself out there. And if you do it right, it can honestly become kind of like your digital resume, and it can kind of like create opportunities for you in whatever industry you want to be in. Or honestly, it's the only industry that can take any hobby and turn that hobby into a business. So it's a really interesting conversation, and I'm excited to kind of like deep dive into it today.
Yeah, I think even when like you look at top entrepreneurs or people who are, do a lot of like entrepreneurship online, so many of them have a social media platform. Like at the very least, I think about some of the most successful founders I've worked with and entrepreneurs I've worked with, and they all are active on at least one social media platform. Obviously, we're coming at it from more of like the video content angle. But I think a lot of the principles that we're gonna talk about in today's episode could work for other platforms if you're building on LinkedIn or X or wherever. But I think it would be good to kind of set the scene of like our journey as creators, because I think, I don't know, I think it's interesting to think about. We got a lot of questions about whether or not we, you know, treated it as a business from the beginning, or if that was like, if you need to do that or what that looks like. And I don't know. I've been doing social media since I technically started my TikTok account in January of 2022, but I was posting like inconsistently. I was posting these like random videos, trends, just like it never really went anywhere. And it was just very inconsistent. So I did it for like a couple of months and then I stopped posting. And then I actually started posting consistently. It was right around 2 years ago. So I've been like actually on TikTok and trying to do something with it and posting consistently for about 2 years. And then I think I had my Instagram account, but I don't think I really started using it at all or posting anything. Honestly, maybe until was it like the beginning of this year or maybe even like some point like the end of last year. I really was not doing much with it at all. And when I started it, I had actually always dreamt of being a content creator. Like when I was 13 and I would watch all like the beauty gurus on YouTube, I was like, that's what I want to do. I would love to do that as a job. But I always felt like it wasn't practical. So I went to school for something else. And then I was like, you know what? Why not give it a go and like try it? But I wasn't necessarily coming into it with the mindset of like, this is going to be a business, it's going to be a big revenue stream for me. I was like, let's just post and like see what happens. And we take it one step at a time, focus on being consistent, and then kind of like let it evolve over time. And now it is at a place where freelancing is still my full-time income because I love my freelance business and I really enjoy doing that. That's technically my full-time job, but then I do social media as well, and obviously the podcast as well.
Yeah, and we have kind of similar timelines because I started my TikTok account in it was either like December of 2021 or January of 2022. And when I started my account, I told myself I was going to be super consistent with it from the beginning. I was like, okay, Erin, like you're going to commit to doing this for at least 2 months. And then if after 2 months you hate it, that's fine, but like at least give yourself a chance. So I was super consistent with it for the first 2 months. And it kind of like took off from there. And obviously I started my TikTok account in the personal finance space. So I did that for about a year and a half, like 14-ish months strictly on TikTok. And then I started my Instagram account in the spring of 2023. So I've been doing TikTok and Instagram since then. We obviously started the podcast in November, and I also started my YouTube channel around that time too. I haven't been super consistent with YouTube. That's sort of something that, like, now that the podcast is becoming a little bit more streamlined, I'm like dipping my toes back into YouTube at this point. But yeah, so TikTok has been the longest platform that I've been on, and that's been about 2.5 years. And then I've added in other platforms since then. But even though I was consistent with it from the beginning, I definitely didn't come into it with like, okay, I'm going to start on TikTok because I want to grow this business. You know what I mean? I really did think of it as like, okay, I graduated from college, I started my first full-time job, and I really don't have anything to occupy my brain other than my full-time job. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to this, where like when you're in college, you have a million things going on. You have like your schoolwork, you have a part-time job, maybe you would have an internship, you're in a sorority. I just had like a million things going on in college, and then I started my first full-time job, and I was like, okay, I clock off at 4 or 5, and then I have nothing to do. And I just like wanted something that was going to like keep my brain occupied, and I wanted something that I could really like work on and like do it as a hobby. So it's not that I thought that like I wanted to take it seriously, but at no point was I like, okay, I'm going to get on TikTok because I want to like sell this course and I want to make it my full-time job and I want to be a business owner. It was more so just like, hey, I'm super interested in personal finance. I know I'm pretty good at it, and I think that I could be pretty successful creating social media content about a topic that I'm passionate about.
I think what's interesting about like for both of us as content creators is we both started out doing personal finance content. And I mean, for myself, it was only personal finance. It was like, I mean, I guess when I very, very first started my page back in January 2022, and when I was like not really doing anything with it, I was posting more of what I post now, which is so funny. But then I was like, okay, no, I need to niche down. I have to pick a niche. Like that was also the era where everyone was like, pick a niche, like just post about one thing. And I know we both did personal finance content, a lot of like personal finance education and sharing what we do personal finance wise. But then we both have now kind of pivoted our social media to do more lifestyle content. And I mean, there's so many reasons why, but I think we've talked about this before too. It goes back to making your social media about you and like who you are and your brand as a creator.
Yeah, definitely. I agree that that was the era in 2022, was to pick a niche, pick a niche. And at the time, my mindset around it was very like straightforward. Okay, my niche is going to be personal finance. And what does that mean? I make educational content about personal finance. So if you go back onto my channel from my videos from 2022, all of my videos were like, here are 3 budgeting tips, and here's how to open this investment account, and here's what a Roth IRA is. Like that was all. And I was posting 3 times a day, 3 of those videos per day.
Oh my God.
And it did help me grow. However, one, all of that information you can find on Google. Like if you want to learn how to open an investment account, type that into Google and you can find it. There's no real reason why that content needs to be all that my channel is. But second, after about a year or so of doing it, maybe probably like a year and a half, actually, it was way after I started my Instagram did I kind of like come to this realization. But you can be in a niche without making your content just very like textbook educational things that you could Google. And the difference between those two is, again, like Grace just said, you're making your channel about you. So you're really shifting that content from outward content, here's how to budget, you're shifting that inward and being like, here's how I budget. Here's how I budget as a 25-year-old that lives in Nashville and wants to balance being on a budget while also living her life. So it's really about like shifting your mindset from, okay, I can have like a quote unquote niche, like I can have an overarching like topic that I talk about as one of my content pillars without me like reverting to all of my content just being this information that I could essentially Google. And I think I heard this tip either in like a YouTube video or on someone's podcast from a content strategist. And she was saying, don't think about it in terms of picking a niche. Think about it as you're choosing an overarching mission for your platforms. And I think this makes a lot of sense in the topic of turning content creation into a business, because when you're becoming a content creator and you want to take it seriously, you are the business. You are like, when you're making yourself the business, you need to think about it in terms of like, what is your mission? Why are people choosing to follow you? If you had 100,000 followers already, what would they know you for? And how I think about this in terms of my own page, as I'm also trying to shift a little bit more into lifestyle and showing more of my life, because I think that that's a little bit more sustainable for me in the long run. My overarching mission for my channel and kind of like my tagline, I think this is still in my Instagram bio, it says my life, but make it financially responsible. So at the end of the day, I want to show women in their 20s how I'm living my life as a woman in my 20s in a financially responsible way. I want to show how I'm still able to travel. I want to show how I balance going shopping on the weekends, but also sticking within a budget and things like that. I want to show how I'm building wealth and all of those things. But I have that overarching mission to come back to when I'm like, okay, what the heck am I going to post this week? Like, what about my life fits into that mission? And luckily, my mission is about my life. So a lot of things fit into that mission.
This is like a realization that I had too, going back to what you were saying about like I struggle with personal finance content now that I no longer am like a strict personal finance creator, because I mean, I have lots of friends who create personal finance content. I support their content, love them, love their content, but I think sometimes I felt, as someone who was creating it and as a consumer who would watch the personal finance content, so much of it just truly is the same stuff regurgitated over and over and over again. And people who create personal finance content as their like full-time gig, and that's like the only thing they do, and this goes for lots of other educational niches or where people are so niche down, they feel like they are repeating themselves over and over and over again. Like, I've asked full-time creators who have a very specific niche, do you feel like a broken record just saying the same thing over and over? And they were like, yes, like 100% yes. And I think one thing I realized, because I was doing that, I did that for over a year of just basically creating all this personal finance content, that I was like, what? Like, this is not, people don't know me. When they think of Grace, they think of talking head who shares money stuff. You know what I mean? They don't think about like who I actually am. And when you're just a talking head, it's hard to feel connected to people, right? Like, you think about some creators that create amazing content but maybe don't let you in on their life, and that's fine, right? That's a business model in itself right there. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I knew for me, I was like, I don't want people to think of me as a talking head. I would genuinely want to build a community of people who feel like they really know me, and I'm able to get to know them because they see my content, they want to engage with my content because, again, they feel connected to me. I remember like people who comment or in my comment sections often, I I know who they are, right? Like, I've had conversations with them. They'll like send me a message and be like, "Oh my gosh, like, that conversation we had 3 months ago, like, here's an update." And I'll remember that conversation, like, because we're all real people, like having real interactions and like becoming basically internet friends. Um, that's like the brand that I wanted to go towards. And then I thought about it too with like my freelance clients, where I help a lot of them. I do like ghostwriting for startup founders. So I help a lot of them build their social media presence on LinkedIn. And I thought about it and I'm like, I tell these clients every day, like, we are entering the era of the personal brand, where like your personal brand is so important, but it's not about necessarily becoming a thought leader in one very specific space, but it's about like showing up with a unique angle. And a lot of people say, well, like, oh, what is my unique angle? And I'm like, your unique angle is literally just your thoughts. Like, how do you view something? It's not like, oh, like, I have to be like the go-to person in sales, or like I have to have, if anyone has seen that fitness creator, I wish I knew his name. His content is hilarious. He does like fitness content, but he always starts out with an aggressive line. Like he'll be like, the reason you're so big backed is because you like do, or like, oh my God, one time he said like back bigger than a Buick. And I was literally, I was like in tears laughing. It was the funniest thing. Or he was like, you're not losing weight because you're doing all this stupid shit at the gym. And he was like showing these like, workouts that are like from Pinterest circa 2009. Like it was just, it was hilarious, but like there's nothing necessarily new about like when he shows you how to do like here's an actual exercise, or like at the core of his content it's like exercise, be in a calorie deficit if you want to lose weight, whatever. That's not new. It's the fact that he's coming out with like his personality and leading those videos off that way, and that makes people feel so connected to him. That's his brand as a creator. And I started to think about it and I'm like, who am I as a person and like what impact do I want to have? And when I started my content, the reason I picked finance is because I wanted people at the end of the day to feel in control of their lives, because how in control of your life you feel is a major indicator of your happiness. And I started with finance because finances are a place where a lot of people feel like out of control of their life. So like, oh my gosh, I just can't get all of this figured out. But then I thought about it and I'm like, that is just one part. And that's one part of me. It's one part of my life. There's so much more to me as a human. I'm what they call like a multi hyphenate, which is like someone who just loves lots of different things, has their hands on lots of different things. My career will always be made up of a million different things. I thrive in that. How can I just show like one teeny tiny part of my life? That is not going to be sustainable. And so I worked with a content strategist who helped me kind of figure out like what is my personal brand. And I realized that my social media, which is now what it is now, is more about creating your dream life. That's the thread, and the mission for all of my content is like, here's my journey documenting create the process of creating my dream life, creating my dream business, and getting my money together and becoming more confident and being healthier and all these things. And I'm going to show you everything I learned along the way. And that's way more sustainable, just to be in that mindset. And I also think that it goes back to, we got some questions about when you're starting out as a creator, how do you get over the cringe or the fear of embarrassment? And there's a lot to say on that. But if you have a why of like, why are you creating content? It makes it a lot easier to do that, right? Because you have something to go back to all the time of like, okay, this video might feel a little awkward for me to get this out there, but you know what? Like, I care more about my impact than I do my pride and like how awkward I feel in this moment. And I will also say, if you're listening to this and you create content and you feel cringe, just go to my TikTok, scroll back real far. Just keep it going all
Same.
the way back. Okay, all the way back. Don't tell me that you did it, and don't send me the videos. Don't, no, none of that. But you will find Cringe City. That's what you will find there. And the thing is, though, is one, nobody gives a crap. Literally, no one goes back and looks at those videos. And cringe, we were talking about this in another episode. Cringe is like the barrier to success. It's just part of it, right? Thinking about, I am trying to become a runner. I went for a run. I ran for 8 minutes. That's like, I could let that be embarrassing and like let that turn me off from running again. Or I could get back out there like I did the other day and run for 25 minutes straight. You know what I mean? Or it's like you could go to the gym for the first time and try to lift a weight and like be like, whoops, that weight is way too heavy. I need to pick something else. And you could let that deter you. Or you could be like, okay, I'm just going to pick the weight that feels better for me. Content creation is the same way. It's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel cringe. It's a new thing that you're doing. But if you can see the vision of like, here's the page I want to create, you know why you're doing it, you know the impact that you want to have, and you're open to growing like and enjoying that process, then like who the frick cares about the cringe? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're all cringy. Everybody's cringy. Like
Totally agree. Yeah, you can also scroll back on my channel and please don't tell me that you do it. I still get likes on a lot of my old videos because
yes,
the TikTok algorithm will still push out your videos for
mm-hmm.
years and I'm
And
still
they're
getting
searchable.
likes.
People can search them and find them. I'm like, oh, why'd you search
Please
this?
don't like take them off. Like literally take them off. But I want to circle back to what you were saying about like you telling your freelance clients that they're not trying to become a thought leader in their space. And this was probably the biggest mindset shift that I went through over the past couple of years creating social media content. I think when I started, and you probably feel the same way, you try to position yourself in as an expert in whatever niche you're in. And if
Mhm.
you like, we're just going to use personal finance as like the example here because that's what we got started in. You try to position yourself as a personal finance expert in the space. And then a year or so in, you kind of realize like that's not the angle that you want to come from because at the end of the day, like we're not financial advisors. Like you're listening to the Girls Talk Money podcast right now. But we bring on some guests when we want to talk about things that are like pretty specialized. Like we talk about like resources where you can find more information. Like we aren't trying to sit here and say that we know everything there is to know about personal finance. And that was sort of the mindset shift. Like you're not coming at content creation from a point of I'm going to act like I am better than the people that are watching my videos, or I'm going to act like I know everything and the people that are watching my videos know nothing. When you kind of like shift that mindset into we're peers and the people that I'm talking to, I'm probably only 1 or 2 steps ahead of where they're at, it totally opens the doors for the type of content that you feel like you can make, right? Like I've made some fitness content over the past couple of months. Am I like a gym, like am I a personal
Aficionado.
trainer?
No.
Yeah, am I a personal trainer? Absolutely not. Like yeah, absolutely not. But if there's someone that maybe is like afraid to go to the gym, or if there's someone who like just wants a little bit of like motivation to go to the gym today, like I'm 1 or 2 steps ahead of where they are and they can get some value out of my content. Or you made the comment about what's unique to you is your thoughts and kind of like your perspective on things. I think that that is like such an underrated tip for becoming a content creator and being like, okay, what do I post about? Like physically, what do I post about? Right. Because I think a lot of people resort to, okay, well, I don't really have a niche. I'm going to post content that's like, here's a day in my life. Right. And you kind of like need to take it a step further to be like, how do I share my raw and authentic thoughts and feelings and emotions through my content and allow people, give people something to relate to, if that makes sense. Like, I think I heard this tip that was like, no experience, no human experience is a unique experience, right? And the more that you can give people that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I feel this way. And I thought that I was the only one that felt that way. But like, now I know that someone else feels that way too. That's the way that you're really going to get people to relate to you and feel like they're a part of your community and things like that. So one kind of just for like a little bit of concrete, like how this works and how I've been able to implement this is I have I have a Notion, and a Notion is where I kind of like organize all of my content stuff, right? But when I'm just like out and about living my life, like going through my day to day, I have thoughts, right? I have all of these thoughts going on in my head. And whenever I have a thought that I'm like, oh, I should share that, like I should share that to my followers, I open a notes app on my phone and I just like write out the thought and I'm as descriptive as possible. So, for example, the other day I posted a video about how I just moved to Nashville and I was feeling a little bit guilty for all of the money that I spent moving to Nashville because essentially my life looks the same in Nashville that it did in Pittsburgh. I was saying in the video that like every day that I spend in my apartment just like living the exact same life that I was living in Pittsburgh, I feel guilty because I spent thousands of dollars to be here and I could have been doing all of these same activities in Pittsburgh. And it was very like raw and authentic and just like that's so much more raw and authentic than me posting that day in the life video because the actual clips in the video were just a day in the life, like kind of vlog style content. But instead of me posting that day in the life vlog style content and the voiceover just walking through what I did that day, instead, I really opened up and shared my raw and authentic feelings, and it got over 100,000 views, and people were like, oh my gosh, I totally felt that way when I moved to a new city, and like it gets better and like all of these things. So really just like allowing yourself to open up and like remember that your thoughts are your unique perspective that you can share and allow people something to relate to.
I think it isn't just about like what you say too. I think a lot of it goes back to how you say it. And like, I think a lot of people get nervous about, oh, I have to be like vulnerable on social media. I have to share certain things. And it's like, you don't have to give me like your deepest, darkest secret or like divulge all your trauma. You know what I mean? Like it can be just these little like micro stories, but also a lot of it has to do with how you say it. Like you'll see, or did I say how you see it, how you say it? I think you'll see these videos of people who maybe they have more like humor in how they say it, or, I think about this like one like mommy vlogger girl that like she's hysterical, and just the way that she like talks through like when she's cooking with her daughter, it's so funny. Just, you know what I mean? Just, it's not anything different really. It's just the way she says it is different. Going back to what you were saying about like not wanting to be an expert, I remember I think when we started, that was like the whole niche down thing was really to develop yourself into like the Gen Z finance person, or the like, that was what everyone said worked at the time. And I remember um I worked with a content strategist, and I remember being like, I don't want to be an expert. Like I was like, I I was getting like very done. And I was like, I'm so sick and tired of trying to be like an expert. Like I was like, you know what? No. I'm like, I don't freaking know. Like how to, yes, I know how to like invest for retirement, but like I'm not 65. So like I'm not going to give you advice on like how to pull your money out and withdraw it. Like I don't want to do the freaking research to figure it out. I'm going to do that when I get to 65. You know what I mean? I'm not doing it right now at 25 years old. I don't need to know how to like withdraw my money. No, I don't. I really don't care. And I was also just like, I don't want people to look at me and be like, "Oh, like she gave like bad advice," or she, not that I was giving any bad advice, but it just put that pressure on like everything I had to say had to be like the right thing and the perfect thing. And that was, as someone who's like a perfectionist myself, that was a lot of pressure on myself. And I had said to the content strategist, I'm like, I just want to show up and I want to have fun and I want to connect with people. And she was like, I was like, yeah, I don't want to be an expert. I just want to do this. She was like, then don't. She's like, don't be an expert. Like, you don't have to be. And I think when I thought about it too, I'm like, a lot of these like more expert content, which again, there's nothing wrong with it. If that works for you, feels authentic for you, like whatever, that is totally fine. Nothing wrong with it. But I almost felt like when I was doing that type of content, I was talking at my audience, and now I'm talking with my audience. Like, the I get so many more comments, so many more DMs, like of real things, like people really being like, "Oh my gosh, I remember you posted this and you talked about this." Like I made a video once. I was in tears the entire video because I could not film it without crying, which I'm not one to just like show up and cry on the internet, but I just was like, I feel like I should talk about it. And I was talking about the guilt of moving away from my parents, and how I wanted to move like across the country, but decided to move 30 minutes away because my parents are on the older side. My dad had just retired, and I'm terrified of something happening to my parents and me wishing I had more time with them. And at the time, this was when I was like pivoting my content from finance to lifestyle. So my videos were like, they were tanking, because when you pivot your niche like so hard, oh Lord, it tanks. The video did like, I think at this point it's probably got like 20,000 views, and I got like the most sincere comments of people just being like, wow, like I really needed this. And to this day, people find this video and they're like, how'd you end up working through this? It's been months now since you posted it. How'd you work through this? And like, that is so much more meaningful in my eyes than, you know, not. But it's funny that you mentioned the no unique experiences, because I say this all the time. I say there's what, like 7 billion people in the world. There is no way statistically that you are having a unique experience, right? Like, yes, there are some very, 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 very extreme situations where I'm like, okay, yeah, that's definitely a unique experience. But a lot of people think like, oh my gosh, I've been like, for me, right, when I found out that I had a gluten allergy, there was like a whole like grief process that happens with that. And my doctor warned me about it. She was like, you're going to feel sad, you're going to feel happy, you're going to feel mad, you're going to feel all the things, because your life is going to completely change. The way you live your life forever now is going to have to look different. And that was my second food allergy diagnosis. So that makes it even more complicated. And that type of situation, for example, is not unique. It's different. The way that I experience it is going to look different for, in comparison to other people. But the experience of feeling sad after an allergy diagnosis is not unique at all. A lot of people think that those things are so unique to them. But the thing is, if you want people to connect with you on those, you have to let them in on that. And when I worked with a content strategist, and there's a lot of ways you can apply this, but one thing that she told me to do, which has been so, so helpful for me and made such a difference in my content, just as like a tip slash strategy, is like, stop making your videos so broad, especially when you're starting out in the beginning. Like, if you're like day in the life of a 25-year-old, I'm sorry, no one freaking cares. Like, no one knows who you are. The only thing they can relate to you on is maybe being someone in their 20s. that is so broad. Nobody gives a crap what you have to say in that video because they have no idea who you are or why they should care. And I did this for so long. You can go back and look at my content. It sucked because I was like, it was just so broad. I'd be like, yeah, like what I like work day in the life as shut up. Like you have nothing like girl, come like and looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, Grace, how do you not figure this out? But I mean, again, we all have our journeys, but you have to give people a point to relate. And the way that the content strategist worded it to me was like an aspiring point or a relating point. So like I have videos where I'm like, what I do and make in a day as a 25-year-old full-time freelancer. So that tells people, wow, people who are in the 20s, they're like, wow, that's an aspiring point. Like I aspire to be a full-time entrepreneur, full-time freelancer. So they're going to watch that video. But I have videos also where I use relatable points where I say like what I eat in a day, gluten and dairy free, someone prioritizing balance and nourishing my body. Someone looks at that and that's a combination of both. But maybe they're like, okay, I relate on the gluten and dairy free part and I aspire to have more balance and to nourish my body better. So I'm going to watch that video. You have to give people points to relate to you and to connect with you or to aspire to what you do and then be interested in it. If you are so broad, like no one knows who you are. And I think a lot of people, when they're starting out, myself included, get stuck in that trap of being like, why is no one listening to my content? And it's sometimes it's like, because they have no idea who you are. And like your story time about like what you did in a day and your trip to Target, no one cares because they don't even know who you are. Why are you going to Target? What are you doing at Target? Why are you spending the amount that you did? Did you have to clear that amount with your partner beforehand? Did you like what, you know what I mean? Like get into the nitty gritty of what that is. And that's how you will find people that will connect with you. Or even if it's just that broad theme of like, here's what I do in a day as a 25-year-old who prioritizes financial responsibility while also living my life. Great, that gives people like a point to connect to you, you know, or like me, here's what I do on a Friday as someone who's like building my dream life, whatever it is. Like you have to give people a point to connect to you. And I think that is way, way more valuable than having like a hard niche, you know?
100%. Yeah, I heard it as in the spice is in the specificity. So if you are like, if your hook is like, here's a day in my life as a 25-year-old and that's it, like that is not going to relate to like literally anyone. Why do they care about your life as a 25-year-old? But if you're able to make that hook, here's a day in my life as a 25-year-old who quit her job to like be a startup founder, or you know what I mean, like do
Mm-hmm.
like what are you doing, like what are you doing, and
Yeah.
why are you filming this day in your life, what's the purpose of it, what are you going to tell people? And then the rest of that day in the life, like voiceover, should be storytelling in terms of not like, don't just walk people through your day in the life of like, here's
Mm-hmm.
a day in my life as a 25-year-old. First, I made breakfast and then I got in the shower. And like they
Yep.
can see those in the clips. So you don't have to
Right.
tell them that you're making breakfast, but like what story are you telling them? And like what, like continue to give those relatability points and continue to let people in on your life throughout the rest of your day in the life so that it gives them something to comment on. It gives them a reason to follow you.
There's a social media, she's a creator and a strategist. Her name's Claire. I used to work with her actually like years ago. And then I ended up I purchased like a content strategy like session with her. And it was amazing having a second set of eyes. I'll link her stuff down in the show notes and everything. But one thing she said to me about that was she was like, prevent the and in your voiceovers and in your videos, because when you think about it, it's like I went to the store and I bought this and I did that and then I went to here. It's like that actually is, when you really think about it, it's like, oh my God, that's so boring. And I say this not, I did this for like a year, guys. Like
Same.
it was so bad. And I think about it now and I'm like, explain the why. Like what's the why behind like, okay, I just edited like a what I eat in a day video. Why did you eat? I ate these little like, they're like sour Skittles, but they're called sour giggles. They're like the organic version. But it's like why did you eat sour giggles? Like what was the reason? Why did you choose that over like a sour Skittle? And I was mentioning how like I just always have to have something sweet after dinner. It's non-negotiable. And like why did I have a polar seltzer at the end of the day? Because I only do that after I've drank 80 ounces of water a day because my water goal is really important to me. Why am I only having one coffee this time? Because I'm trying to improve my gut health and feel like having too much coffee impacts that. Not I had coffee, and then I had lunch, and then I had sour giggles, and then I had Polar
It's
Sub.
like they
Like,
can see it. They can see it on the
right, it's
screen. Yeah.
right, it's like
Or put it
we
in the caption.
get it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like we get it. Like, tell a story. And when I had that session with Claire and she like pointed that out, well, she made a video about the and thing and it called me out. Oh, so bad. So I swiftly booked a call with her because I was like, please roast my content so I can improve it. Because I knew I was doing the whole and thing. And now when I like script videos out, I will literally make sure that I'm not starting or I'll even just start the sentence with like I. Like, just
Yes.
I'll try to change up the first word.
Mhm. Yeah,
But I think, go ahead.
before you switch points here, I have a couple of examples of like how people can apply this because I think like that's really hard for people who maybe haven't gotten started yet and they're like, well, I don't have a niche. I don't know like what am I talking about? You know what I mean? I have a couple of examples that kind of like come to mind. One is my own. I literally just posted this video yesterday and I was posting a video about I made these high protein cinnamon rolls and it was like responding to a comment that asked for the recipe because I mentioned me making these high protein cinnamon rolls in another video. And I was like, oh, let me know if you want the recipe. And someone said, yes, I want the recipe. So I made a video responding to that. And the clips were me making these cinnamon rolls. So you could see me adding all of the ingredients. You could see me putting them into the oven and everything like that. But the voiceover, instead of me being like, and then I added flour and then I just was telling a story about why I was making these high protein cinnamon rolls and saying that I really love to bake. It's a hobby of mine, but I like to actually eat the things that I bake and I prioritize eating pretty healthy. So that's what I was talking about in the video. But then I just said, like, I'll put the recipe in the caption and I put the recipe in the caption. So they still got the recipe, but it gave people a reason to care about me in that video, even though it was literally just a recipe.
Yeah. Even just having something in the video too that like is different. There's this, I don't even know who the creator is, but her videos come up in my YouTube shorts all the time. And I know her, I don't know what her name is, but I know her videos now because she makes every Sunday, she makes an ice cream sandwich, homemade. And she says in the video, she's like, and I use like a sourdough mix to make the cookies. So they're good, healthy. And she says it just like that, like every time. And I mean, that's like her signature thing. There's a real estate agent, I think she's in Tampa. Her name's Carter Long. Her videos, she says, I'm Carter Long, your homegirl. I I'm not looking to buy property in Tampa. I don't think I follow her, but I've seen her videos so many times that I know in my head now. Carter Long's a homegirl. I like, you know what I mean? That's who I'd go to if I went there. But like, it's just those things too can be helpful of thinking about like, who do I want to be? Why am I creating content? And incorporating those little things in, adding your
Yeah.
personality to things. Um, but I
No,
feel
that's a
like,
really good point.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's a really good point too. If you're overwhelmed on where to get started, is think about like what is repeatable for you because
Hmm.
that repetition is very, very important. I know you mentioned earlier on that like you don't want to feel like you're repeating yourself or regurgitating information. And there's such a difference between repeating yourself and just regurgitating information that you can find online because when you're repeating yourself, you're giving people a point of familiarity and when they see it time after time after time they're going to be like, wait, I've seen this girl doing this so many times, like I'm going to follow her. For example, I've been posting what I spend in a week on my social media for over 2 years now. Literally every single week I have posted, here's what I spend in a week as a 25-year-old living in whatever state I'm living in at the time. You know what I mean? Like it's the same video every single week. It doesn't get tiring because physically what I spend in a week is different every single week. So it's still a little bit different and people are still curious. But just think about like what type of series can you do or what type of like point of familiarity can you give your audience to allow them to eventually convert?
And I think that repetition also doesn't necessarily have to come from what you say, but the format of the content too. Like, for example, with like Alex Earl's Get Ready With Me, like she does Get Ready With Me all the time. And I think when you're starting out too, because most people aren't coming out with like, oh, I'm just jumping into content creation. It's going to be my full-time job or whatever. So I'm quitting my other job and just hoping content creation works. Most of the time you're doing it on the side of some other job, which was the case when I think both of us started. So you might not have as much time to like, you know, edit these fancy videos. Think about like what is repeatable for you with what you like to do, what you want to say, and the capacity that you have. Like, if you're like, you know what, I do my makeup every single day for work, so I'm going to try to do a get ready with me every day for work, that becomes like your format. And maybe you tell a story while you're doing that get ready with me, or you open up about something that's going on in your life or whatever. Or if you pack your lunch every morning for work and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna like get clips of me packing my lunch every single day and I'm gonna do like a voiceover with that. Like, think about what feels repeatable to you, and not necessarily, it doesn't have to be what you say. It can truly just be the format of content that you do. But I also think that certain things like, yeah, developing a series where it's like a part one, a part two, like I feel like when we started series, it was like everyone was like, make a series, like do a series, like that's what everyone was saying. And I feel like it's not as common now, but it is so useful. Like, or even making it into sort of like a kind of like a challenge in a way, like a 30 days to better health day one. I've been doing the 1 year experiment thing this year that I've talked about in a bunch of podcast episodes. And like that has been an ongoing thing that like people are keeping up with. I could definitely post about it more, and I should, but I did a money challenge on my social media when I was doing personal finance content. I had a product that went along. Like, I was saying something different in every video, but it was like it was a series and it was similar format, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I did one about 6 or 7 months ago. It was around like November, December, and it was 30 days of doing things I don't want to be doing. And I was just talking about like in all of the voiceovers, I was just talking about how I've been feeling really burnt out lately and I'm like overwhelmed because I'm not really good at keeping up with like small little life tasks. And I would just kind of like talk about that and like how I was feeling. But the clips would always be me either like cleaning or like getting something done like admin wise on my computer and things like that. So yeah, I like that tip. The series doesn't have to be like part one of like for
Mhm.
example one of my first series on TikTok was things that will kill your budget in your 20s, and it was parts like 1 through 15 or something, and I would say like here's a thing that will kill your budget in your 20s part one. Like, it doesn't have to be that boring, but just something. When I think of the word series, I just think of something that's repeatable to give you enough content to kind of like hit the ground running.
Mhm. 100%. Do you want to pivot into like the monetization side of things?
Yeah, we can talk about this for a little bit. I think we're going to do an entire separate episode on kind of the nitty-gritty of monetizing, because there are like so many different monetization streams and like things you can
Mhm.
get in, and even kind of going beyond just being a content creator, but really that funnel between content creation into business owner, because I know there are so many content creators that have grown these big followings and then have taken that money that they make on social media and funneling it into a business. And we want to do a good job of like really showing people that funnel and showing how content creation can open up all of those doors for you. But we're not going to be able to get into it in this episode. But I do think what we can talk about today is sort of like, at what point can you monetize and what does that look like?
I think when I was going into content creation, I really didn't know what that threshold was. And I will say, now that I've been like doing this part time for 2 years, I don't think there really is a threshold. I don't think there's a certain number, because ultimately, at the end of the day, followers do not equal money. Like, I have seen videos on my TikTok, for example, of creators who have 4, 5, 6, 700,000 followers, millions of followers, whatever, and they have posted videos being like, you know, that they don't make any money from their social media. Or I've seen people being like, well, how do I get more brand deal offers? And they'll literally have 700,000 followers. And I think that's a common misconception, where people see these creators that are really, they look really big from the outside and they think, oh my gosh, they must be like rolling in dough, making a ton of money. But that's not always the reality. And there are creators that have quote unquote smaller audiences. I don't want to make it sound like I'm diminishing like anything that people have built. I'm technically still considered a small creator. But people who have 10, 20, 30,000 followers and make 30K a month from that. You know what I mean? Like, it really depends on what you choose to do. And I think it also depends on what you want to do. Like, for example, there are people who do brand deals and they do user generated content, or UGC. brand deal is something that goes up. It's a sponsored post. A brand pays you to promote their brand in your video on your page. It goes up onto your profile. UGC can be used to go up on a brand's social media just to organically promote their brand, or they can use that video in paid ads. And some people really want to do a lot of UGC. So they really market themselves as a UGC creator from the get-go, and they show their life on social media. So maybe by the time they have 20,000 followers, they have $10,000 a month worth of UGC contracts or whatever, and they're making a couple thousand a month from brand deals. Well, great. Yeah, now they're making a full-time income from social media. However, there are people who are like, yeah, doing UGC is just like not my jam. Like, I really don't want to do that. And so they're looking at other income streams like brand deals and affiliate marketing, where you earn a commission when you promote a product and someone purchases that. And that's different. So the threshold, or like at what point can you monetize, it depends on what you want to do and how you want to make money. And I also think if you're like really like, I don't want to make money in a certain way, I don't think you should kind of not follow through with that, right? Like if you're like, UGC is not my thing, don't just like take on UGC opportunities just for like the sake of making a buck, or don't just like accept brand deals from like whoever for the sake of making a buck. That will diminish your personal brand very quickly if you're doing that. Think about like social media should be enjoyable to you. Think about what you want to do, how you would want to make money. Certain people don't have products that they sell on their social media because there really isn't a product that they want to create, and some people do. So it depends. Like there's no specific threshold for when you can monetize. It just depends on your brand and how you want to make money.
Yeah, I think this is a huge myth in the content creation industry, is that like I think if you're not in the industry, you just assume that views equals money. And outside of basically YouTube, this is a myth. For context, if you're a YouTube creator and you have 100,000 subscribers and you get a bunch of views on all of your long form YouTube videos, you're making a decent amount of money just on views, because halfway through the YouTube video, when you're watching it, an ad will pop up and the creator that made the video is getting a portion of that ad revenue. But with short form content, so TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, like all of these different platforms, when you're posting, there really isn't an ad revenue share associated with that. So on TikTok, someone could have 1 million followers and get a ton of views on their videos, but for the most part, they're really not making any money strictly off of views. So unless
It's small.
they're
It's very, very, very
yeah.
small. Like TikTok, it's like there's a bunch of requirements to hit on your video, and then it's very small. I will say I have heard Snapchat's really good. Like Snapchat has a cool
Yeah.
revenue share program, but I think there's a bunch
But
of
you have
requirements
to
to hit that too.
You actually, yeah, they have to like invite you into that. So if you're already a big TikTok creator, they might invite you into that Snapchat program and you can make some money and stuff like that. But like there's a bunch of nuances to it. But yeah, let's say you have 1 million TikTok followers, pretty much all you post is like short form little trends and stuff. And even if they get millions of views, you're really not making literally any money off of that. So it's kind of important at the beginning, like you said, to be a little bit strategic on, okay, if I want to make money from this, where is that money going to come from? And I think it depends on what niche you're looking to get into. I think the more educational your niche is, the more you're going to lean onto things like digital products or services. So, for example, let's say you're a real estate investor and all of your content is about real estate deals that you do and how to vet real estate deals and like all of that kind of like educational stuff around being a real estate investor. Maybe you have a digital product that is like a deal analysis spreadsheet or something like that, or like a newsletter where you release good real estate deals. I really don't know much about the real estate industry, but this is just an example. But then or let's give another example in the educational front. Let's say you are a dietitian or something and you offer one-on-one coaching. So a lot of your content is very educational as a dietitian, and then you convert people into one-on-one coaching programs. That's like a relatively high ticket offer. So on the real estate investor side, maybe you have a $10 digital product and you're getting a ton of people to convert on your $10 digital product. But then maybe if you are a dietitian who's doing one-on-one coaching, you don't need as many people to convert because your offer is a little bit more high ticket. So I would say that's on like the educational front. And if you, the more you lean into an educational niche, the more you're going to need to also lean into creating your own income streams through digital products, through services, through physical products, anything like that. But then the more lifestyle you are, the more opportunities you're going to have to be able to leverage brand sponsors and things like that, because you're letting people into your life. So there's more lifestyle products that you can support and be sponsored for.
And I will say in the lifestyle space as well, I guess this could go for different things, but if you are promoting a lot of products, like if you're a fashion creator or a beauty creator where you're talking about products a lot too, I think you can make a lot more from affiliates, like just from the Amazon affiliate program and the commissions that you earn from that. I've seen some creators who make like six, seven, $8,000 a month from their Amazon affiliate alone, simply because they are like fashion creators and that's really like what they talk about all of the time is clothes. But yeah, I think it does definitely depend on the type of content that you create and the substance of your videos. I will say too with the lifestyle thing, it's like a the more you show of your life, the more points of relatability people have with you, but then also the more like brand deal opportunities you could get. I was just doing a like newsletter edition for a client of mine, and it was on like pet influencers, and it was just talking about how like if you have a pet and you show your pet, you've literally just opened up the door to all of these different things: pet insurance, pet food, pet like, toys, like just pet smart, like, you know what I mean? There's just so many things that get factored into that. The financial thing, having a, sinking fund for pet expenses, like just there's so much that goes with it. Or if you're like always in your car, there might be like, yeah, car brands that come, or like car accessories. Like it's just what you talk about this like, with kids and stuff. That's why a lot of people, which we're not getting into a conversation on the ethics of showing your children on social media, but a lot of people, when they put their kids on social media, that allows them to partner with so many other brands. And that's why people get into that trap of like putting their kids out there a little bit too much, I would say. And like, that whole situation. But it's because it allows, there's just so much more. Even like showing my apartment, like when I moved here and showed my apartment, there were like brand deal offers I would get for different like furniture companies and, stuff like that, cleaning products. But before, when I lived at my parents' house and I wasn't really showing my surroundings because it was my parents' house, I wasn't getting those offers because there's no way to integrate that product into that content. So, but it is tricky. And I will say, the opposite side of this coin is like when you do lifestyle content, you have to set that boundary of like, what am I going to show? What am I not going to show? Where's the line? Because very quickly when you get into lifestyle, everything can become content, which is great because you're like, oh my gosh, I can put anything up there and, document my life really easily. There's so much I could use of my life to create content. However, then you're like, sometimes you're like, okay, I need to put the phone away and stop like filming literally everything in my life. So it's definitely like a double-edged sword. But I feel like that's a whole nother conversation for another day too.
That is totally an entire other conversation. This is something that I've been thinking a lot about recently. It's something that comes up in dating a lot. It's like that's a boundary that
Yes.
I like can't really cross. Like I'm not going to be the person that's on a date and being like, "Wait, like let's film this." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's so yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely a conversation for another day, especially because we are out of time. This conversation was really fun, and I feel like this is something that we could continue talking a lot about because social media is a very good side hustle at the end of the day. It's something that can be so fun. It's something that you can really turn, like I said at the beginning, you can turn any hobby into a business and monetize a lot of different hobbies through social media. And it's fun. And it's something that has really changed our life, has really helped us create our dream life. So we could talk a lot more about it in other episodes. But thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Girls Talk Money podcast. And until next week.